I know, I'm ready for his cue. Tell us when you're ready. Okay. I'd like to call the Pelham Board of Education meeting of November 3rd to order. Would everybody please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance? Thank you. This brings us to item 2.4, reiteration of the executive session motion. Sue.
The board met in executive session to discuss collective negotiations pursuant to Article 14 of Civil Service Law, to discuss the employment history of a particular person and the record of a particular student.
Thank you. So welcome. What a crowd. We have a nice celebration that we'll be focused on in a few minutes. I want to start by thanking Mr. Johnson, our Siwanoy School Principal, for leading what I understand was a thoughtful discussion about respect, empathy, and kindness last night. I'm thrilled that the school community was able to come together for a productive conversation about sensitive issues and look forward to those conversations continuing in the future. As a parent and a board member, I want to share a few points about the events at the high school from this week. One of the reasons why this is so difficult is that in this day and age, anything that references a safety threat to our schools is frightening. I understand how this whole situation was confusing and concerning to many. I have a student in high school who is also navigating this worrisome chain of events, and so I understand from a firsthand perspective what so many felt on Monday. While the rumors that were going around the building on Monday were not real, the feelings students, staff, and parents felt were real. We are all experiencing a real-time trauma from the last year and a half, and this situation further highlighted the work we all need to do to re-engage students and parents, to build trust in our schools, and to reacclimate our students to school procedures, protocols, and resources. The aftermath of this experience has rightly turned towards how we communicate with one another, what the district is legally able to communicate, how the district works in partnership with authorities when there's a police investigation, and an important reflection on whether students truly understand what to do if they feel unsafe in school. Quite simply, we need to take lessons learned from the past few days and apply them. I'm confident that Dr. Champ and Mr. Berkowitz and our school leaders will do just that. This is one of many situations this school year where the use of social media has led to disciplinary issues and/or students feeling threatened or unsafe. Each of these instances have reminded me that we as parents need to be partners with the school district to help our students understand how the sharing of information via social media and text can have unexpected and potentially harmful consequences. We have an excellent working relationship with our police departments, and we trust their judgment. I'm confident that the adults are always working in the best interest of the safety and well-being of our students, and I'm confident that the district and our local police are united in this shared goal. Regarding committee applications, applicants were notified of their committee assignments last week. Seems like 4 weeks ago at this point. We are grateful for the overwhelming interest this year in our committee work. As we mentioned, we had 90 applicants or something like that. Yes. We were able to place 2/3 of our applicants. We had 90, overwhelming. The committee members will be posted to the district website this week, and we look forward to a very productive year ahead. And ending on a very positive note, I just want to say how personally thrilled I am that we will be awarding tenure to our middle school principal, Lynn Sabia, a true gem of our district. So cute. I love when little people come to our meetings. I thank you for your years and years of service to our students and schools and look forward to many, many more. So with that, I'll move on to I'll move on to section 3, which is a motion to appoint a clerk pro tem. I make a motion to appoint Alex Wolf. Sorry. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay.
Drew the short straw again.
Always goes to you. Section 4 is approval of the minutes. I'd like to take a consent of 4.1 and 4.2 to approve the minutes from October 6th at our business meeting and October 20th at our work session. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Thanks, Leah. A second?
Second.
Thanks, Ian. Any questions or comments? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Next, to start out with our celebration, I'd like to make a motion to move section 8, which is the superintendent's personnel recommendations, up in the agenda. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Thank you, John and Vinny. I'll give it to you. Any questions or comments? All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay, Dr. Champ, take it away.
Discussion on point 8.1?
Yes.
Okay, I'm going to move over to the microphone for this. There we go. Thank you, Chris. So good evening. I am thrilled to be here tonight. To honor, thank you. I'm thrilled to be here tonight. To honor and make the recommendation for Lindsay. And before I do that, though, before I do that, I want to share some comments from myself and from her colleagues. Our beloved Lynn Savia.
Getting a new cord for you.
Don't say April Fool. To make you wait as long as humanly possible to get to this point. Okay, thank you, Chris. We're in business. Lynn Sabia came to Pelham, hopefully I got all my facts straight here, in 2005 as assistant principal for Pelham Memorial High School. Prior to Pelham, she ran the athletics department at King's College, was a health teacher, director of athletics, and then assistant principal at Maria Regina High School in Hartsdale, and then assistant principal at Woodlands Middle School High School. All of these experiences gave her the perfect background for a successful career in Pelham. In that role, she earned tenure and the support and respect of the faculty, parents, and students. As if the role of assistant principal was not enough, I got my dates wrong. I changed the wrong date. Okay. A few years later, while at Pelham High School, she also took on the role of district athletic director. While she did an outstanding job, I'm sure, thankfully that did not last long, and she was able to shift her attention back to being an assistant principal. And then in 2010, had the opportunity to move to Pelham Middle School to be the assistant principal there. In this role, she once again established herself as a supportive and respected leader to students, parents, staff, and colleagues. She was a critical instructional leader in helping Pelham Memorial. Oh boy, see, Lynn, you got me emotional here tonight. All right, take my time. So again, Lynn was a critical instructional leader in helping Pelham Middle School to achieve its status as an international baccalaureate world school. So when the chance to move up to the principalship opened in 2018, she was a shoo-in for the job. In her short time there, she also led her school to become a No Place for Hate school, a New York State School of Character, and a National School of Character. When asked about her greatest qualities, her colleagues say that she is collaborative, an excellent leader, one who makes unbiased and equitable decisions while always putting her students above all else, a strong advocate for students in the building, a person who is honest, compassionate, unselfish, values integrity, and has strong interpersonal skills. Lynn's greatest strength is her compassion. She understands what every situation calls for and is incredibly adept at making people feel needed, included, and heard. She develops strong relationships with students, teachers, faculties, families, and community members. Lynn genuinely cares about each of her students and staff members, and that caring is obvious in her daily interactions with them. She makes decisions from a place of deep moral conviction. She is a person of faith with a tremendous heart of gold. Accountability, ethical behavior, respect, equity, diversity are at the core of her personal, ethical, and professional moral compass. She is a friend that will always stand by you no matter what difficulties you are facing. She has never become cynical in spite of her many years in the profession, and always does the right thing, even when it is the more difficult path. She loves her grandson, Brody, who became a regular at our administrative cabinet meetings over the summer and last year while working remotely during COVID. And she constantly shares the newest pictures with everyone who asks about him. And he's brought a lot of joy to all of us on some very tough days. I have to say, I make many, many decisions, both big and small, on a daily basis, some days more than others. But to this day, one of the best and frankly one of the easiest decisions I have made in the last 4.5 years has been to recommend Ms. Sabia to be the principal of Pelham Memorial High School. Did it again. Pelham Middle School. And now, as a follow-up to that, I could not be more proud to recommend Lynn for the board to award her tenure tonight. Lynn, congratulations.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Dr. Champ, Dr. Garcia, Board of Education. Thank you for having the confidence and trust in me. Thank you for appointing me the principal. I always wanted to be the principal of Pelham Middle School, not necessarily a principal, but principal of Pelham Middle School. So thank you. I have the best faculty and staff anybody could ask for. Best assistant principal, best community, and most of all, the best students. And I consider myself very blessed to be able to get up every day and come here. So thank you very much. Thank you.
And if it's okay, we're going to pause for just a couple minutes to take some pictures. So if anyone would like to come take a picture.
Should we take the actual motion?
We should make a
Oh,
vote.
wait.
We need,
Oh, wait.
we still have time to change our mind, Lynn.
Really stretching this out on me.
I actually have a couple of questions.
Should I take your questions during the middle of the motion?
Yeah, okay.
Okay, we'll do
afterwards.
it formally. Do I have a motion to approve tenure to Ms. Lynn Sabia?
So moved.
Second.
Thank you. Any questions or comments?
I was on the board the first time when you were appointed in Pelham, and I think it was for a different program though, right? Was it the middle school
So the first time
Assistant.
it was the high school AP, and then that's when we
Right.
did Bridge Academy
Bridge Academy?
back then.
That's what I remember, Bridge Academy, because you created that program, you made it flourish, and you, in fact, convinced community members to this day who contribute to that program because of the quality of it. So that's a tribute to you. Haven't you been up here for tenure before?
Yes. Yes, as an assistant principal.
Ah, okay. So this time we'll make it stick.
That's it. Thank you.
I just want to make the assumption that any parent who has had middle schoolers has an enormous amount of respect for somebody who would choose on a daily basis to go into a building filled with middle schoolers. So, Lynn, our hats are off to you. You're an amazing, amazing person, and whoever said compassionate, I think, is the word that comes to my mind. Congratulations.
Thank
Well
you.
deserved.
Thank you.
Does anybody have any questions? No? We'll stretch it out one more second. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Congratulations.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Pictures?
We still have
Please.
the rest of that section. We'll wait until after the,
Take time.
little 5-minute break to do some photos.
Yeah.
that's what I was thinking, but, yeah. Yeah. Okay, we're going to get started again. We need to go back to the rest of Section 8 to finish. I'd like to take a consent of 8.2 to 8.5. Do you have a motion?
So moved.
Thanks, Vinny. A second?
Second.
Thanks, Sue. Jim or Steve, anything you want to add?
We just want to thank Eric Katz. I know that he announces retirement at the end of the school year. We just want to thank him for the service. We'll recognize all the retirees at the end of the school year, but we just want to make sure that everyone knows that he's a wonderful teacher and we're going to miss him.
Thank you.
Great, and just, again, thank, at least for the non-certificated people, thank you for those who were here and coming on board. We're happy to have a couple more, well, another monitor, as well as a probationary maintenance laborer and a provisional senior account clerk full-time. So we're happy to be able to fill those positions due to recent well, one of them is a recent retirement and one is a vacant position.
Thank you. Are there any questions or comments from the board?
I recognize again that one of our parents is going to be joining us as a monitor, and I'm always grateful when parents participate in the school community, so thank you.
All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay, so this is what we're going to do. Saying this out loud so I get back on track. We're going to section 5. After section 5, because we have so many people who signed up for public comment, I'm going to take a motion to move public comment up earlier in the meeting. But first, we're going to get to our administrative and committee reports. 5.1 is the superintendent's report. Dr. Champ.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks, Jessica. So good evening. Good evening. Again, I'm going to echo a lot of what Jessica said in her opening comments. I want first to acknowledge what transpired at the high school and the middle school this past Monday, and acknowledge that it really was deeply troubling to all of us. One major lesson that I think we all learned is that two very opposite things can be true at once. A school can be absolutely physically safe and under no threat, but it can feel completely unsafe at the same time, which is never what we want for our students, parents, or staff. As Jessica said, that fear was very real, and something that we want to take steps to make sure that does not occur again. Just want to clarify some things regarding that. A lot of this was clarified with students earlier today in assemblies by Mr. Berkowitz. There was really, over the course of the last, from about midweek to through Monday, about 4 separate events that actually occurred. All were individually investigated by the district and/or the police. Given that there were ongoing police investigations in some cases, and given that there were some due process issues in other cases, or some of the cases, that does limit us at times at what we can say. And I know that is incredibly frustrating. It's frustrating to us because it just opens the door for misunderstandings. And it's frustrating to parents, to students, and to staff when we can't fully share everything that we would like to share. But I think it's just important to understand when there are ongoing investigations, that does present limits, and due process, again, is something that for those students involved in the situation, we do have a legal obligation to protect those due process rights. That being the case, I do want it to give a bit more detail, which is in alignment with what was shared at the parent meetings and the student meetings. That initially, the first incident did have to do with one student threatening another student, and texting a threatening photo, which did include a gun. That was outside of school. It was handled completely by the police outside of school. Another incident had something to do with a Netflix anime-related death book. So there was investigation around that out of concern what that may be. An additional incident that happened, I think, around that same time, I think we'll all remember, believe it was Thursday, we had a lockout. That was not a disciplinary matter. That was an issue of someone with an unstable individual was seen at the front of the high school. Not a student, staff member, just someone from the community. And the high school was put into lockout to ensure the individual did not come into the building, and eventually the entire facility, again, for the same thing. But again, completely unrelated to any other incident. Another incident occurred, again, a different individual, separate instance, and investigated by the police, a Snapchat post that was of concern. That was brought to the police, and they vetted and determined that it was not a specific imminent threat to the school or to anyone at the school. And then finally, over the weekend, and again, completely separate and apart from the school, there was students on Halloween that were apparently a robbery, jumped, however you want to phrase it, and a student was purportedly hit with the butt of a gun. These were all separate and unrelated, but very concerning events that we worked in close partnership with the police throughout. And of course, where there are major infractions of the code of conduct, there are also major disciplinary consequences. And again, due to some of the due process issues around those, I cannot go further into that. But I think most everyone knows our full range of consequences, and the most serious of those being out-of-school suspensions. So those are the 4 different events. Really 4, there's a 5th one in there if you count the lockout due to an unstable individual. That happened to coincide. They were all unrelated, did coincide in around the same time, which presented a very challenging environment for the school. And the inability to be specific with that information added to that. I have to reiterate that we take matters of school security extremely seriously. Whenever there is a threat, whether it's specific or general, or even questionable, we work closely with our local police departments and have been doing so over the past week in particular, as I outlined. We enjoy a very close working relationship with both police forces and trust their judgment as they are security and law enforcement experts. They are incredibly dedicated, and I know just from our ongoing conversations, they were working into the wee hours and overnight hours multiple times this past week out of concern for the safety of our students and our community. I want to stress that based on the investigation of our local police, we did have extreme confidence that there was no credible threat against the school on Monday or any other day, which is why we proceeded in the way that we did. There was no gun on campus, there was no school shooter threat, and no specific threat to the school as determined by the police. With that said, it is clear to us that the students did not feel safe, despite the fact we knew that they physically were, they didn't feel it. And we have to take that just as seriously. Internally, we're working to debrief and process what happened on Monday and to assess how we can better communicate and act the next time any situation like this arises. Yesterday evening, Principal Berkowitz held a Zoom Google Meet with about 250 parents and guardians, families, to hear their concerns and answer their questions. Today, he also held grade level assemblies with the high school students to hear directly from them. I appreciated the candor of the students as they provided clear feedback for the school and for the district. I myself am offering a drop-in session for students who want to speak further and want to speak with me tomorrow. Mr. Berkowitz will be holding another follow-up session for any students who want to come by and discuss further as well. We will take all the feedback collectively from our students and from our parents and from our staff to determine steps to improve in times like this going forward. Leadership team on the secondary campus will also be meeting to review our communication protocols and assess how we can ensure that information internally and externally is shared in a more timely and reassuring manner, both to families, students, and staff. We'll be looking at both the content of the delivery of as well as the delivery of the communication. And again, the feedback that we've received will be a major part in that plan. Once we do have a plan developed for that, we will share that out so that everyone is on the same page about what to expect with our communications. And I think that ends the first portion of my report. I do have a couple other items I was hoping to come back to later on, but I know that there's a desire to.
Well, I was thinking we would just finish section 5.
Section
and
5?
Then
Okay.
we would take, if that's okay.
Okay.
Because otherwise it
Yep.
gets confusing.
These will be very quickly, but also very important. I also want to acknowledge the meeting that was held last night at Siwanoy Elementary School. I want to as well express my thanks and appreciation to Mr. Johnson, the principal, to Erin Larkin, one of the PTA folks that's been working very closely with him and I believe heads their diversity committee. for their leadership and for putting together a really meaningful event at the school last night. Thank you to all of our PTAs and their diversity liaisons. Our PTAs, many of them put out a statement of support as Siwanoy was working through processing the comments that were stated and that were carved into the slide. The racial comments that were shared with the community last week. It was a very difficult time, I know, for many families, but a very important time for many families, and I appreciate the leadership of the folks at Siwanoy who came, who supported, who were willing to have difficult conversations, and I think what most excited me is coming out of the meeting that night, I heard very strong commitments for that to not be the first time, not be the last time those conversations were had. There was a lot of excitement and a lot of commitment to ongoing conversations. So thank you to our PTAs who as well have committed to this work, each of them establishing diversity liaisons. We had a great meeting with the PTA presidents, the liaisons this week as well to talk about how we can coordinate our efforts going forward around making our schools environments where all of our children feel safe, welcome, respected, and feel that they belong. So we'll be sharing more of that again at our PTA Council tomorrow and continuing those efforts and working for ways to strengthen connections across the schools. Two other quick items. Our testing program is up and running finally, where each week we get a little bit smoother and a little bit better at it. So we encourage folks to still continue to participate in that. If you haven't consented, you can still do so. Just look for the C19 email in your, search your inbox, and you can still submit to that. We had, I think, one positive case in each of the first rounds and 0 cents, which is great. Another update related to that, we know that vaccinations for children 5 through 11 were approved, I believe, yesterday. We thank you for those who filled out the survey expressing interest in getting vaccinations at school. We've shared that information with the county and are waiting to hear if we can be identified to be a vaccination site. We had almost 550 parents indicate their interest in doing so at one of our schools, so we want to make that as accessible as possible. So we're just waiting to hear from them on that and on any updates as well about the test to stay approach and other items that we've been looking for guidance on. So very pleased about that interest in that, and we're hoping to be able to deliver a vaccination site very soon as well. And that ends all of my items for tonight.
Thank you. 5.2 is the Board of Education Committee reports. I think we've had a few committees.
Yeah, I have one.
Okay.
The Finance Committee met, and I'm just double checking the date, October 27th, which I believe was just last week. Again, it feels like a long time ago. So the Finance Committee existed in Pelham and then didn't exist for a number of years. So just to reiterate, the focus of the Finance Committee is to oversee both short-term and long-term budget planning and implementation with Mr. Ricky as our business lead. So we met for the first time this year, and we went over a number of things, including the tax cap projections that will impact the 22-23 school budget, the foundation aid projections that will also impact the budget, and these are expectations. Nothing is final at this stage, but we got an early look at kind of Jim's expectations around what those numbers will look like. We also looked at our fund balance projections. That's a very important part of our budgeting process, that we look at our various different funds, where they stand at any given point in the year and what they look like going into the budget process for the next year. Jim also provided us with draft 5-year financial projections for 2022 to 2026, so we could get a sense of even longer-term planning, and brought us up to date that there'll be a new technology system implemented in the finance office called Forecast 5, which will help them do some more visualization around our budget data, which I think is going to be great to see. So I know our treasurer, Jackie Vigil, was really interested in getting it up and running, so look forward to seeing that. We also looked at our reserves. We talked a bit about the state of our capital reserves, our tax certiorari fund, Given some changes in the economy, there may be some tax cases that are coming our way. So just had a kind of quick discussion about things that we might be anticipating hearing about in the coming months. And then just covered two other quick matters. A potential to look at LED light conversions down at Glover Field, and if we do that, how much that could cost and what, budget areas we could think about using for it. Very preliminary, but just kind of initial numbers. And lastly, we had a conversation with legal counsel on an item that's on the agenda tonight, and no, was supposed to be on the agenda tonight, I'm sorry, which is is it called a resolution or a law? It's called a resolution that was passed by the town of Pelham, 4858, right? Is that correct?
That's the state exemption.
Okay.
Yes.
Which is an exemption for commercial properties. So it was passed by the town and ultimately also has to be voted on by the school board, but that cannot happen until it's recognized by the state. So when we get that recognition by the state, we'll be voting on it as a board. So Jim, I don't know if there's any color that you want to add on that now, or
I could touch on it.
we can do it, or we can do it at the time. Okay. And that was pretty much the inaugural meeting for this year of the Finance Committee.
Thank you. Are there any other committee reports? Leah?
Yes. So, the Always Fascinating Policy Committee met on October 28th. We had a very productive meeting. We discussed an updated version of our DASA policy, which we are sending to the attorney for a first review, and once we get it back, we'll bring it to the board for a first reading. We also discussed a new payroll policy that came to us from Jim, that was recommended to Jim by our internal auditors. The payroll policy made a stop at the audit committee before it came to us, and we are also sending that to the lawyers for an overview, and if it's okay, we will also bring that to the board for a first reading. Then we started talking about a policy regarding surveillance cameras, but we did not finish that, so we'll continue working on that. And we also looked, our policy service sent us a list of all policies that we are required to have in our manual. So we took a look at that in anticipation of going through our entire policy manual and making sure that, that we're in good shape, which it looks like we are. We have some work to do, but I think we are in good shape.
Thank you. Is this what you would have provided in the section 7?
Yes.
Okay, good. We're moving right along. Any other committee reports?
Just a
I
question.
think Michael has.
Uh-huh.
Are we going to discuss kind of the superintendent's report now, or?
We don't typically. If you want to, if you have questions at the time, then you can always jump in. Do
Okay.
you have questions about?
I think we need to discuss a little bit about what happened. Yeah. I know I've looked through the code of conduct, and just maybe I'll read quickly just so people understand. Under the section engage in conduct that is violent, number 6 is communication by any means, including oral, written, or electronic, such as through the internet, email, or texting, off school property where the content of the communication, A, can reasonably be interpreted as a threat to commit an act of violence on school property, or B, result in material or substantial disruption to the educational environment. And I know we discussed, of course, a lot of this information is confidential, and we went over it in executive session. But I just want to focus on that point, considering the risk of disruption. And you mentioned the police investigated, and there was not a true threat, but I think we kind of identified that there's a difference between necessarily the police investigation and the code of conduct investigation, and that can potentially lead to a lot of disruption. And thinking about how do we address disciplinary action quickly to try to limit the amount of disruption to the school day.
Is there anything you can speak to in addition to what you already shared regarding the differences between those two investigations?
You know, and you raise a good point there, and I think that is always one of the challenges. The police are the experts in investigation and determining what is a threat and what is not a threat. They have a higher bar for what they can act on than a school does. So I think that's why we turn to them as the professionals first to make an assessment of the situation. And once they've run their process, then the school can then pick up and run our process. And there often can be a lag between those just because of the nature of them doing their work, then us doing our work. But there as well can be something that doesn't rise to their level but does rise to ours. And that's where, you know, I think a number of these situations that, you know, that we dealt with over the last couple of weeks, or last week or so, fell kind of into that category. And time was needed to deal with them at the school level, separate and apart from, while we work together and collaborative, it is still two separate processes, so additional time was needed in a couple cases.
Yeah.
Yep.
I guess just I, as a board member, would support you and the school administrators that if there is a risk, you know, these kind of online postings, a risk of substantial disruption, that if you need to make a disciplinary action quickly to have further investigation or to address it with the school community to try to calm the situation, I would support you in, you know, making those decisions rapidly.
Thank you. And that's, I think, where we try to balance due process in there with the larger safety questions. So thank you for that support.
We do have a district safety plan
Yes.
that we approved at our reorganization meeting. It's very detailed,
Yeah.
maybe up to 70 pages long. And that's the public portion. There's a large section that's confidential for security reasons. To your understanding, was our district safety plan followed during these events of the last week or so?
Yes, you know, and that's one of the things that was discussed this morning is there's certain threats would trigger certain protocols. Internal threat would trigger a lockdown. An external threat might be a lockout or some version of in between. So we reviewed those with the students and talked about when you would initiate those, but also why we didn't, being that the police had determined that there wasn't a threat, so there was no need to implement a lockdown or a lockout in most of these situations. Certainly the one that I mentioned about, there was a lockout last week in front of the high school. That would be the one exception where we did actually activate it. But in the other circumstances, from the advice that we had, the analysis we'd gotten from the police, there was not threats that would warrant that type of activation of those protocols.
Do we have consistent protocols regarding the timely and accurate communication of safety information to parents and students?
Each situation is always going to be a little different. So I think what we aim to do is find the accurate information, determine what of that can be shared, as we've said, the due process and the confidential nature of what we have to navigate. And then we work together to put something out as quickly as we can. I think in this, you know, we recognize in this Monday, you know, information should have gotten out sooner. And I think, you know, lesson learned. We tend to follow the same kind of process as far as analysis of what are the facts, what can we put out, and now how do we craft something to go out. So we're looking at, one of the things that we are looking at, and it was some feedback from students, I think, that gave us the idea, is there a way to use a text feature more so? Because email's good, but it doesn't, it's not as quick, it's not as noticed in this day and age by many people. And it certainly can't keep up with the speed of social media. So we're looking at ways that we can implement texting more often, especially in something that is has more of an emergency feel to it.
Yeah, and I appreciate that you've already started thinking of ways to improve, and I think it shows leadership to be able to reflect and start making plans to make improvement really quickly. So thank you for that. And we also talked about communications being maybe more bullet point and very
Yeah,
to the-
succinct.
to the point.
Yeah.
I know some people in the community have asked about increasing security, things like metal detectors. Have you considered the pros and cons of that? That's not necessarily something that I think we need, but is that something that
It's
are
something
the
that tends to
security
come up.
consultants?
It comes up from time to time. My
Dr.
perspective,
Parkland.
yeah,
talked about
yeah.
that.
Whenever there tends to be a more of a crisis event, people do tend to think about that. I think traditionally, our position has always been one of more balance, whereas we do want safety procedures. We want people to feel safe, staff, students, parents to feel safe and a sense of control. People also don't want an overly policed environment. I think we've always had the benefit, at least since I've been here, of having a lot of retired law enforcement that are right on our staff, so it's kind of the best of both worlds. We also this year have partnered with Alteris, and they bring a new level of expertise with them, so they consult with us on a lot of protocols, procedures. They even have, they're going to provide us with communications resources. So I think that's very helpful, and that's going to help us to improve how we manage things. I think it's one of those areas I think you'll have people of across the spectrum of how much hard security versus openness they want. I think something else that is, a factor for us is we are an open campus district for the high school. And this year, we've extended that, and even last year, we extended that through 9th grade because of the COVID procedures in our cafeteria to allow space. We've permitted our 9th graders to also access the open campus. So we have a campus where students are coming and going all throughout the day. So that in and of itself is normal, and we have a quarter more of students this year, 25% more students doing that this year. So it's much more active, a lot more coming and going, and I think that's something that certainly it comes with pros and cons, to your point. I mean, there's benefits to it, but there's also challenges and potential vulnerabilities. So, it presented additional challenges for us on Monday, but that's an area we're working with our leadership, working with Alteris. We can look at strategies for how do we maintain a balance of safety and security functioning at the school, so the students feel comfortable in their school. They feel safe, but they also feel comfortable as they move about. And there's always room for improvement.
It is reassuring to me to know that we have outside experts in this field who are helping and assisting, and I think you even mentioned maybe doing an analysis of what happened over the past few weeks, and just trying to identify how can we make things better. I want to thank you again for your leadership. I think as a parent and as a board member, the events of the last few days were very troubling, and especially on Monday. But I think you've been open to hearing feedback and coming up with ways to improve, and I'm really looking forward to that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I'd just like to add, it was useful to hear that there were actual separate incidents, which I think got conflated in people's minds. And so hearing it sort of spelled out that way was helpful to sort of untangle it, if you will. Untangle the various stories, rumors, et cetera, that are going around to understand the dynamics. So that was helpful for me. Thank you.
Anybody else? Thank you. Do we have any other committee reports? Trying to remember where we are. Okay. 5.3 is Assistant Superintendent's update on authentic learning.
Just quickly, it's kind of.
No, I'm going to finish this section, and then I just want to get through the section, otherwise we keep breaking.
I'll be quick, I just.
Okay, quick report.
Yeah, this is just to talk, the second part of my job, deals with personnel. I didn't get a chance to thank her, but Lynn Sabia, I mean, a quality person. I think one of the most important decisions that's been made in the past few years is that when the former principal announces his resignation, was to recommend to Dr. Shamp that, Lynn is ready she's the principal. She should be the principal. And then, of course, then Shaw Llewellyn to fill that position. And I just want to, if she was here, I hope she will watch the videotape again, is that I think she's made this district better, made me a better leader as well, and has really, I think, made a huge impact on the lives of so many kids in this district over the past 10, 15 years. So I just want to thank her.
Thank you. Okay, do you have anything for Holchild?
No, not at this time.
Okay. 5.5 is Assistant Superintendent's update on finance and facilities. Mr. Ricky, quick.
Hi, good evening, and I'll try to be as quick as I can. If you drive by the old Hutchinson School, you will see that it is starting to come apart a little bit more visibly from the outside. The windows are being removed, and that interior demolition is moving forward. I shared a schedule with the board on that demolition late last week. That was recently revised. It's been pushed back another 2 weeks, so we should start seeing some exterior demolition in the December time frame. And we're piece by piece, no explosions. And the plan with which the company is planning on doing that, they've shared that information with the village. They've not yet received all of their permits from the county nor the village. So they're still working through that process. They're a very experienced company in doing this. So with that, there are 2 change orders, 1 notification and 1 for board approval this evening for additional asbestos-containing materials that were detected as part of that demolition process. And that's before the board for this evening, and those have to be removed in order for the building to come down.
Jim, one quick question.
Yes.
Do we think that's the end of the abatement?
I don't want to,
I
I don't want
know,
to, I'm worried about
for the
Murphy's Law kicking in. I'm worried about that. But yes, I mean, that's all that's been identified right now, and we'll do the yogi. It isn't over till it's over, but we're keeping our fingers crossed for sure. With that, the fit out at the Sanborn Map Building has been moving forward. They, like everyone else, we are working at the tempo of our vendors and their availability of supplies. So as you know, we did have we pushed off the work on the work here on the administrative offices until those spaces are ready. We were optimistic that we would get there probably by the end of November. I'm a finance guy. I'm probably thinking we're looking at the early part of the year. So we're gonna work with those vendors and see what that does as far as if there's an additional change cost as far as holding that option for another month or 2 months time period. Because we want to make sure it's available. We're running fiber optics, and we need to make sure that space is ready and people are able to move into it prior to going up, being operational. At Prospect Hill, we're moving forward nicely. The bricks were delivered on site. They're building another mock-up on site, which is actually, it's going to, if the board approves it, it's going to stay. If they don't approve it, they're going to take that part down and they're going to redo that part. But it's exciting. We're moving to a next phase of that construction, and on the interior partitions in the bathrooms, you can't, under the title of you can't make this stuff up. We're still waiting on some pieces of hinges and metal particle pieces and everything else so that they can finish the partitions. But the bathrooms are functional. They just don't have every stall functional at this present time. We had a very good finance committee meeting, and I appreciate the board members on the committee making themselves available. Exactly what was discussed, the 22-23 upcoming budget, our long-range plan, some reserve planning, some exciting kind of energy performance type style contract for transitioning to LED lighting at the Glover Complex through the New York State Power Authority, and also discussion about with local law passed by the town of Pelham, and it would eventually be a resolution from the school district to omit a property tax exemption 485B at the state level, which would prevent commercial property owners from taking advantage of a tax abatement situation. So in a community like Pelham, if a commercial property owner would take advantage of that, certainly the burden would fall more heavily on the homeowner. And this is a way to close that part to take that avenue away. And there's other avenues for them to get incentives through the county. This is just one incentive that the town assessor recommended and the town took action on. Town passed the law. In order for the resolution to be passed, we need to have acknowledgement from the state that the law was received and filed, and the state has not yet done that. So we know the law's been sent up there, and I think it's just a matter of backlog and processing at the state level. So once that's ready, we'll bring that forward to the board. This evening on tonight's budget, we have some transfers for some salary monies for for some instructional dollars for our interventionists in PPS. Our corrective action plan, if it looks familiar, it's because it is. It's the exact same corrective action plan, but we put final dates of completion on that. And as if you look at that, some of those dates are already completed, which is nice. I missed it on my earlier report. I just wanted to say thank you to one of our senior custodians, Mr. Anthony Fantone. He's been with the district for 4 years. He's moving forward on his career as a head custodian with the City of Rye School District. So we're very excited for him, and he's the person you see here in the evening. So we wish him well, and we feel very fortunate that we had him for the last 4 years, for sure. So that's what I have, and I hope if you have any questions, I'm certainly happy to answer any of them.
Thank you. Maybe we'll save them for when we get to that
Great.
section, so we can move on with public comment. So I'd like to make a motion to move up communications and comments from the public. Do you have a motion?
So moved.
Thanks, Leah. Second? Any questions or comments? All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay. We are about to convene into the public comment period of our meeting. We believe it is crucial for us to hear from our community members about their concerns and issues. The board is here to listen. The public comment period is not designed to be a discussion. Accordingly, the board may not respond to your concerns and questions tonight. This is because we take your concerns and your questions seriously, and we want to have sufficient time to process and research the issues if need be. We will, however, have the relevant staff member get back to you within a week's time. I also want to point out that under state and federal privacy laws, we're unable to entertain any comments or questions about school personnel or students. Please know, however, that we take personnel and student concerns very seriously. On these matters, we would ask you to go through the appropriate administrative channels, such as your school principal, our assistant superintendents, or Dr. Champ. We want our school board meetings to serve as an example to our students, that members of our school board and members of our community can deal with controversial issues in a civil manner and demonstrate mutual respect for one another. In that spirit, we will insist that all speakers and members of the audience address their comments to the board president directly rather than the audience. Finally, I want to remind everyone that the board and administration is reachable by email at boe@pelhamschools.org. The board will now entertain public comment. Please remember to state your name, Pelham mailing address, and to keep your comments as brief as possible to allow sufficient time for other members of the public to speak if they wish. I have a list, so I'm going to start with Katie Caulfield, if you want to speak. I don't know if people just signed in or if they wanted to speak.
Hi, I'm Katie Caulfield. I live at 150 Townsend Avenue. We need to all say our names. Alexi Scholl, 1076 Grant Avenue.
Jessica Russo, 955 Peace Street.
We are here representing our PTA's Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Committee at Prospect Hill. We condemn the recent acts of racism that came to light last week, as well as all acts of racism, especially those within our schools. It is difficult to hear these stories and upsetting to think of how they affect the students. No student should have to deal with these aggressions or attacks, and especially not in what should be a safe space like school. Rather than continually reacting to these acts after the fact, we need to be more proactive in preventing them from happening. To help achieve this goal, we support the hiring of a DEI professional to coordinate the efforts of the DEI policy that was adopted over the summer. Having a professional in the position to serve as liaison between the staff, PTAs, families, and students would help provide direction and concrete planning for necessary and critical steps ahead. It is clear there is a common goal in this town of wanting to improve our school system's approach to DEI, but there is also a lack of understanding just how to go about achieving that. No one is quite sure what first steps need to be taken. A DEI professional can help lead us with things like training for the staff, speaker series for parents and students, more exposure to different cultures through books, art, music, etc. We want all the students in our district to not just feel safe and represented in their schools, but also to enjoy school and have it be a positive experience. We want students' differences to not just be tolerated and accepted, but to be appreciated and celebrated. We firmly believe that engaging a DEI professional is a step in the right direction. Thank you.
Thank you for coming tonight. Next, I have Alex Lowy.
I got to read because I'm so nervous. All right, dear Board of Education, firstly, I would like to thank you. Oh, okay, my name is Alex Lowy. I live at 513 3rd Avenue in Pelham. Dear Board of Education, firstly, I would like to thank you and every member of the Board of Education and Dr. Champ for the endless devotion and work you're providing for our children and this school district. As an immigrant myself, I experienced many times the importance of having a community that embraces diversity, respects and understands otherness. I'm here today to share with you my experience as a PTA co-president in respect to our attempt to do DEI work. Our PTA leadership has been focusing on DEI building for 2 school years, and I'm here to urge the Board of Education to support us in this endeavor. We need professional assistance and expertise. I would like to understand and learn about tools available, goals to approach, and faux pas to avoid when it comes to DEI work. For instance, do we at Hutchinson focus on our different language groups first or on our single parents? What statement do we make by focusing on one group more than on another? As a PTA volunteer, I don't feel qualified to make these decisions without guidance. I do the best I can, and I hope for understanding that I can't master it all at once. I am aware that the district has an amazing strategic action plan and that our pandemic absorbed all the time and work to keep the school running. I really do. I also know that the conversation has been happening regarding the DEI director. Nevertheless, I see the need for developing more compassion in our school district, and I would like to know how much I would like you to know how much I would appreciate a DEI director with their guidance under one umbrella for all schools at Pelham. Thank you.
Thank you. Lisa Schaefer. And crew. The whole back row.
Lisa Schaefer, 110 Corona Avenue. Dr. Champ, members of the board, I stand here tonight on behalf of the Colonial School PTA and in solidarity with all the parents, caregivers, teachers, staff, students, and alumni of Colonial who feel outrage at the recent incidents of racism that occurred at Siwanoy Elementary School. Here we are again, shock, outrage, sadness, frustration. How many more times will we need to issue statements like this before we as a district take decisive action? The district must prioritize the implementation of the DEI policy that was adopted over the summer and engage in direct and meaningful conversations with our students to teach them explicitly what hate speech is and that it won't be tolerated. It must go beyond being kind and a good citizen. Teachers must be better trained. Incidents must be fully investigated, and parents must be held accountable. We encourage the district to engage a DEI professional to help steer its efforts and ensure that DEI is front and center in each building. The BOE cannot spend more time debating over semantics and best practices while our children are being traumatized and made to feel ostracized. We must be proactive in preventing this type of behavior, not just reactive and shocked when it does happen. Our diversity committee and PTA stand ready to do our part in partnership with the board and the Cultural Competency Committee to take any action necessary. Our children are not the problem. We know that. We know that ignorance and racism are at the heart of the horrendous acts that were reported, but so too is complacency. Even if the vast majority of our community agrees that these acts are awful and even embarrassing, too many aren't willing or don't know how to take meaningful action to prevent acts of hate from happening again. Adults who allow acts of hate and racism to occur are the problem. Anyone who thinks that finding the N-word on an elementary school slide is unfortunate but not their problem is enabling racism. Anyone who thinks that someone else will deal with a swastika etched into not their child's locker is allowing acts of hate to plague our community. Any community leader who is not laser focused on eradicating acts of hate and racism from our classrooms, playgrounds, and community is part of the problem. Prejudice and acts of hate are not just a school problem, and there's only so much that the district can control. But if any child is made to feel unwelcome or unsafe, we must do everything in our power to change that. That child is our child. Those acts of hate target us. In closing, we want to express our sympathy to all families impacted by these acts of racism and remind them that they are not alone. We stand with you.
Thank you, Lisa and everybody. Stephen Dolan.
Stephen Dolan, 116 Cliff Avenue, Pelham. That's a difficult act to follow. That was incredible. So I just had a couple quick, just I guess, questions and comments about the events of the week. I think Dr. Champ said it earlier, and it rang true. I didn't come with anything really prepared. Decisions, right? Like this board and administrative staff and teachers have had to make more decisions in the last, 18 months, 2 years than probably the prior 20 combined. This week is a testament to those decisions. As Dr. Champ said, some of those decisions on timing and delivery of information, in hindsight, could have been done differently or maybe in a different fashion or form, but I think it's just the amount of decisions that had to be made or have to be made, as you said, in several, not just one instance, as Mr. Bryce was saying, that there were several. I think that is glaring and very and overwhelming. I know that being the environment or the environment of where we are now as a community, being a lot of us home, and I was home from work that day, seeing it firsthand was pretty alarming. Alarming in not so much the email that Dr. Champ sent out at, I think she sent out at 12. I was looking at my emails at 12:38, saying that we've talked to the authorities and everything had been deemed safe, but was glaring was the action and the speed of information that was happening. Seeing my phone ring, my daughter calling my wife downstairs, my wife texting me upstairs on the 3rd floor, asking me what we should do, I think is something that we should probably talk about more as a community. And I think Dr. Champ said as far as the information coming to the students and on how we do that. But I think we need to talk about it, and I'm sorry, I don't know your name, but you mentioned as far as what text messages and photos and emails or Snapchats or whatever that is that a student sends and what the consequences of that are. What I think we should also be looking at is the consequences of someone spreading a false rumor on a phone. And the power and the impact that has. Obviously far below the level of an act or a threat, but that's something that we need to, as a community, think about, and as parents think about how that gets disseminated. There's a sign when you walk in the door here in the cafeteria, and we're here in the middle school, where I have two children. Phones are not allowed, but the minute that they go 1 year older, they're allowed to walk around with their phones, Snapchat a picture of an empty classroom that spreads to everybody else. If that's something that we should address, and obviously I'd be the most unpopular parent in Pelham, but I don't need full agreement. But that's that. You know, that we should think about that. I don't know how they get a year older, but their ability to walk around with a phone is unhindered. Yeah, obviously, I should have started this, and I'll end this with. We are all indebted to every person here and the people behind you, not only for the decisions, all the great decisions that you made over the last 2 years, but all the great decisions you'll make in the future. And that's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Stephen. Swani Shudabala.
You were very close. Swani Aquino Chudawala.
I was trying to read your handwriting, and I've heard you say your name a few times.
It's terrible.
Okay, sorry. I'll get it right next time. I
It's
promise.
okay, you're good. I'm at 139 6th Street. I think everyone pretty much said what I wanted to say. I want to thank Dr. Cham for all her hard work in these critical times. When you were reading all the incidents that happened, I turned to my neighbor and I said, well, the N-word incident was in there. So although it was a passive threat, I find it to be a threatening assault on people of color. And I think it should be labeled as one of the incidents that should be added onto your list, because I feel that it created a lot of distress and distrust in the community, and it feels like a physical threat. It feels like a threat to not some psychologically, emotionally, and also like you don't belong here. And so I think that we should elevate that incident a little bit and really take these matters seriously and not just as a side note, because it sends a message to the community that these messages are hate crimes, and it was done on school property. So that was my only thing, but thank you. Thank you for your work.
Thank you. Marjud Herzog. Okay, I wasn't, okay. I realized I'm setting myself up for that and also mispronouncing names, but we had so many that I just wanted to. Kim James.
Good evening. I'm Kim James, 10 Bonmar. I wanted to address what happened this week. I have a high schooler there, and I can tell you that the kids right now, they don't trust that you guys have their back. They don't feel that the messaging was appropriate or quickly disseminated enough in a clear way. And I think that you should focus on fixing that problem when you have your meeting to discuss everything that's been happening. And the other thing that I just wanted to say is I have an email in to somebody from the safety committee, and I'm hopeful that I can work with that person and maybe help, maybe be on a committee to help. I guess there was a committee sign up. I didn't know about that, but if it's not too late, I'm interested. So that was basically what I could think of in the 2 seconds I had to prepare. But thank you very much for the time.
Thank you for coming. Mauricia Yawley. I'm reading people's handwriting, I'm sorry. Yawley. What's your last name?
Oh, yeah, I'm her daughter.
I want to get your name right. I'm sorry, I'm just reading. Joel.
Kind of short.
Okay.
So there's just a few things that
And I'm sorry, your address is?
40 Lincoln Avenue.
Thank you.
So there's just like a few things that I'm still not really understanding. I'm a high schooler at Pelham. I'm a sophomore. And we had an assembly today, and I told Mr. Berkowitz how I felt. And I still feel as if he didn't understand where I was coming from. So it's like a multitude of things. For one, as a black student in Pelham, and I'm going to a predominantly white school, and I already get targeted enough since middle school, me getting called the N-word by my fellow classmates multiple times. It was brought to the office, nobody did anything about it. They just moved on like it was nothing. I was called a slave to my face. My mom had to come to the school, speak to the principal, nothing was done about it. But then last year in a group chat, which took place off school grounds, I sent a rap video. The principal, I guess, thought he wanted to label me as an animal abuser, so he called my mom about it and made it a big deal, and I almost got in trouble for that. But then tells us today that a threat made towards our school saying that they were gonna shoot it up at 12:45 on Monday wasn't a threat, and that we were supposed to feel safe. I had teachers in my classes saying to me, oh, you're being over dramatic. Nobody needed to leave the school. It's not like dead bodies dropped to the ground in the hallway. It's not like there was bloodshed. And that, someone saying that to me definitely doesn't make me feel safe. And what I don't get is how we found out, well, I found out, and along with other people, on Monday, almost around 12:45, when the threat was made that somebody was going to shoot up the school. But after 12:45, the principal sent out an email saying on Saturday night we were informed that PMHS student posted pictures on Snapchat. And he told us at the assembly that he knew over the weekend, but nobody else found out until the day of something was supposed to happen. And the kid was allowed in school. And one of my friends, she's coming to me crying, saying how she doesn't understand why they would let him in school and she has to sit next to him. And then another kid who threatened one of my friends and said he was gonna pop her and send her a picture of a gun sits next to me in my English class. And then I'm being told by adults in the school that I'm supposed to feel safe, and I don't get how I'm supposed to feel safe around somebody like that. And then I'm also getting told today, and I was like, I understand it's a confidential situation and we're not supposed to think about fellow students, but the principal told me and the rest of my classmates that those students are only under suspension. But I know if it was me, as a black student, I would not be just under suspension. And that's really all I have to say.
Dr. Champ's just going to clarify a couple
I
things.
just want to clarify a couple things. And Marisa, I'd love if you'd be available to come meet with me in the morning and we could talk this through. Just to clarify, there was not a threat to shoot the school or shoot anyone at the school. I just want to be really clear about that. And with regard to suspension, because I know that there were some comments this morning about expulsion, we're not allowed to expel, like kick somebody out of school completely in New York State. There's long-term suspension, and there's different levels of that suspension, but I know folks wanted to hear that word expulsion, and that's not something that we can do. But there are varying options of suspension. So I would love to, it's not a Q&A, unfortunately, but I would love to have a further conversation with you in the morning. Absolutely. Okay? Yep.
Thanks for your confidence to speak up at our meeting. Tanisha Williams? Okay. Crystal Howell?
Good evening, I should say. My name is Crystal Howell, 210 2nd Avenue. I'm not going to repeat a lot of the things I made last night on the call to Mr. Berkowitz, but I am very happy to hear Jewel, who's also one of my daughter's friends and a neighbor, speak up because she's reiterating a lot of what happened. I actually was one of the parents who picked up their kids early. I saw a group of kids outside. I'd never met these kids, never saw them a day in my life. And I just said, because I saw the concern, are you okay? You should have seen the responses I got from children of all races just blurting out, because I guess I must have been a mother figure. So I do want to just point out, it may not have been a physical threat, but there was a psychological threat that impacted every single person in that school, even the teachers. So I originally came here to talk about some of the hateful discriminatory acts, which I do want to address. But I think it's important for me to just kind of give you some follow-up actions and then some of the ideas I think that could probably help the board and coming to some type of conclusion or resolution and making the children feel safe in that school building. So I think the most important thing was the teachers had no idea what was going on. There are phones in every classroom, I was told. I'm not sure if you can have like an automatic robocall that goes out to them, but the teachers are asking the students what they could do, and I think that is like the most asinine way in an emergency, because the students wouldn't survive for the most part should something have happened in that building. There's also text features. I don't know if there's like, it can go to the teachers' phones, but there are actually physical phones in the school building. One of the school teachers was actually a substitute teacher. She had no idea what to do, right? So how do you train to make sure the substitute teachers in emergency situations are properly trained in an emergency? And then, you know, I think Jewel brought up a good point. I think a lot of this misinterpretation, I don't want to call it a rumor mill because it was a misinterpretation. If people are notified of something that's happened timely, Monday probably wouldn't have resulted in the way it happened, right? So I understand events happen outside of the school, but because it's a small community, what happens outside of the school impacts what goes on in the school. And I think this administration kind of failed to see that aspect. So when the incident happened last Wednesday or Thursday, an email could have went out, same thing with whatever happened on Friday, and then what happened on Saturday. Like, parents just want to be communicated timely, right? Because you took away my decision on what I should do, and I was lucky I was working from home that day. Regarding the hateful incidents, I think from past board meetings, I watched them from home, and I heard I hear a lot of like anti-CRT discussions. And one of the things I just want to address that is, I'm a black parent. I know a lot of black parents in Pelham, not everyone. Not one of us has advocated for CRT to be taught in school, right? We have purely advocated for our students to learn all aspects of history. And I feel like we took so many resources from you guys who are trying to, you know, build new buildings, create new fields, and we're diverting them to topics that no one here has asked for, right? We want you to teach our students what history happened. That's it, right? So I feel like let's get back to focusing on the safety, because we can see there's gaps in our safety protocols. I believe you guys do need to hire a DEI coordinator. I applaud the PTAs that showed up today. This DEI coordinator, one, has the expertise. One, doesn't take away resources, because you guys are doing all these moving parts when you can really focus on your administrative piece and have that worst person liaison with the rest of the school buildings. And I think one of the things, too, we forget that there are teachers in the school that can also go to that DEI person, because there's a small percentage of marginalized teachers in the school, and they need to have an objective kind of sounding board. So I think the most important thing is, I think this as a community will probably build us stronger, because we're all now focused on our safety of our children. But the second piece is, I think the board really needs to be more transparent sometimes with the discipline. I know when I read the code of conduct, it doesn't really tell you what's in school suspension, what's out of school suspension, what's an expulsion, since it doesn't exist anymore. There's a lack of transparency. And I think one of the fears is, you know, my daughter, just like Jewel, is in two of those kids' classes, sits next to the kids. So how do we introduce them into that building? Mm-hmm. That hasn't been addressed. Is there like a searching of their property, like their book bags when they come in, since some of them physically did have a weapon, if it was fake or not, right, in a picture? And more transparency in the code of conduct language. But I do appreciate you guys getting beat up, because I know that's what's happened over the past few days. But our kids need to feel safe. And when your kid comes home crying and calling you on the phone, I cried at night because I didn't know if this is a Sandy Hook event going to happen. Like, I had no idea. So we need to be very, very, very transparent in discipline and what we're going to do to keep these kids safe. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Dana Brown?
I think she covered everything.
All right. Now, there's some tough acts to follow here, right? Angela Mata?
Hi, Angela Mota, 1381 Roosevelt.
I too thought I was signing in, but I'm going to take this moment. First of all, I wanted to find out, in regards to the communication with the staff, I think that was the first mistake that was made. There were obviously teachers that did not know what was going on. Some teachers had to deal with crying children. Some teachers were giving exams. Some teachers were oblivious to what was going on. You had a myriad of things that were going on at the same time. I personally found out from my son, who was out to lunch, that this was happening, that this threat was going on. I called the school. It was very difficult to get through because I'm assuming lots of people called. And they told me, everything's under control, have them come in, and that's what I did. And I regret that because my kids were terrified. My daughter today comes home and tells me, I got notices, first of all, that she missed 2 classes. My daughter doesn't miss classes. So I'm calling her, not getting through. I don't know what's going on with my daughter, which is very concerning because this is not my child at all. She doesn't miss classes. So she says, I had to go to guidance counselor because I was so upset after the assembly today. What happened in this assembly that my daughter was more upset after a meeting that was supposed to calm and keep these kids safe, instead turned out to make it worse for my daughter? I don't know what happened there. I'm getting mixed messages. That needs to be addressed. Because obviously there were people there that were upset because you wouldn't have this turnout here if this wasn't the case. There needs to be transparency. There needs to be more communication, honest communication. I understand that he's a minor and you can't give information. I get that. But another problem is, if this kid is coming in with a weapon, it's because he's getting bullied. Because people don't wake up and say, I'm going to bring a gun or a knife or whatever to school. He's obviously getting bullied. Something's going on. And the bullying in the school is a major, major problem, as you know. We cannot deny this. We have to take care of it. If we need experts to come in to fix this, because social media is not going away. It's not going away, and we have to get ahead of this. We are too far behind. As a parent, I know I'm far behind. My kid knows a lot more about this than I do, and I struggle with this all the time. But there are consequences. There are consequences for my son or my daughter if they do something. And in this school, I feel like there are no consequences, and that's a problem. And if we have to band together, then we will do so, because this cannot happen again. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Is there anything you want to clarify on that? There was no gun in school.
Yeah, I just want to again clarify, there was no gun in the school.
The incident that, hi, my name is Dana Brown. I live at 115 Wolf's Lane. The incident that took place last week, the first incident that you mentioned, it happened, I think, on a Wednesday. And that Thursday, the kid was in school. Then on Friday, I think he got suspended.
And we can't talk about specific students.
Okay, I didn't mention any names. I just said on Friday he got suspended. You know what happened that Wednesday. What, you can't tell us what the consequences are for him besides a 5-day suspension?
We can't talk about individual students, disciplinary matters. I'm sorry.
Okay.
Tara Lyons.
I wasn't really planning on speaking today. Hi, Jess. Hi, everybody.
Hi.
Thank you
were
all
just
so
signing
much.
in.
Thank you for coming together. Thank you for trying. Thank you for being productive and kind of moving this forward. I think what the community really needs is a little bit of healing alongside this process. So I'm just hoping that maybe we could just learn just from every little thing that's happened. And hopefully tomorrow there will be some healing for the students with the teachers and stuff. And I think maybe what you guys can do is maybe just reach out to these students. Really smart kids. I mean, right? I mean, we have the smartest kids around. We do have the smartest kids in Westchester, don't we? Come on, really? I would recruit the kids find out what's going to make them feel safe. Do some kind of a really just simple questionnaire. Talk to the kids, see what they want. Texting, I think, is a great idea, Dr. Champ. I think that is spot on. I think texting the teachers first when anything happens, so that each teacher, wherever they may be, what classroom, what site that they're in, they'll have that information quickly. And they'll know from that text what their next steps are when the kids are frantic. I know from being a nurse practitioner, working at a college, this can happen pretty quickly. I think, like Angela said, social media is a little scary. It does get way too far ahead of us. So I would just recruit the kids. Find out from them what's going to make this safer. What ideas do they have for us to kind of move forward and, change communication. But thank you, though. Thank you for trying to create some resolution. Thank you.
Thanks for your ideas, Tara. Tara Lyons, yeah, I'll give it. Anne Marie Garcia. Oh, you can go. Anne Marie's chatting, so you get. Go ahead.
I didn't sign in. Sorry.
That's okay.
Katie Glantz, 32 Clifford Avenue. First of all, thank you all very much for everything you always do for the community and your efforts. I just wanted to say something really quick. With any effort or action you take or guidance you give the high school children, if you could also address the middle schoolers. That's really all I want to say. I'm sure they can benefit as well.
Thank you. Anne Marie Garcia. And Tiffany Aber.
Hi, Anne Marie Garcia, 4256 6th Avenue. I'm up here on behalf of PTA Council. I'm the president.
Hi, Tiffany Hebert, 804 Colonial Avenue, and I'm the PTA Council Vice President.
So I'm going to read a statement on behalf of the Executive Board of the Council about the DEI work to be done and being done here in the district. The PTA Council of the Pelham Union Free School District expresses our deep disappointment and sadness over the most recent incidents of racism that have occurred in our schools. We stand here in solidarity with the victims of this racism, along with all who are ready to take meaningful action to prevent incidents like this from ever happening again. Children can't learn when they don't feel safe, welcome, and included. It is our responsibility to ensure that each child knows that they matter. We cannot stand by and allow these incidents to continue to take place. We must take action to ensure that every child knows that they belong. As PTA Council, it is our job to bring together all partners in education in our town. This includes each individual PTA from our 6 schools, SEPTA, the BOE, administration, parents, teachers, local nonprofits, our non-parent community, and of course our children. As this central hub, we challenge each stakeholder to take concrete steps toward ensuring the welfare of our students. We as a collective PTA are ready and able to create, promote, and sponsor educational programming to help our families and children learn how to not only value the differences amongst us, but to celebrate them. We will work with the district to bring to fruition some of the programming recommendations from the Cultural Competence Committee. We will share resources with our units to help ensure that each one is doing all they can to create inclusive programming. We plan on actively working with the district and community organizations to make all of this happen. All children deserve every opportunity to reach their full potential. Bias and hatred impede that from happening. It is our responsibility to call this out when we see it. We commit to holding all stakeholders to the standard of doing whatever it takes to ensure that each child sees how much we value them and believe in the greatness they can achieve. Thank you.
I just had a few comments of my own that don't represent the PTA Council. I'm speaking from my own personal experience as a physician, and one of the things that we learn early is when there's an error and harm is done, and there was harm done here, psychological although not physical, the first step is to acknowledge that that harm was done. And I believe that's what our children need to hear from you, from Mr. Berkowitz, an acknowledgement that harm was done. And the second step is to look at that error, because the error is never just one single person. It's often your system. And you need to do a root cause analysis and really look at what are the steps that led to these errors and what can we do to remedy them. And once we've done that, we close the circle and we communicate back to the community what are our next steps, what have we decided as our plan going forward. I would encourage you to include in those plans some sort of a template, because these instances where you are bound by legal barriers as to what you can disclose will invariably occur again. Since you know that they will occur again, maybe there should be a template. This is the communication that the parents should expect to see if we are in this scenario. And this is the timeline that we will give ourselves to get back to the community with more details when we have them, so that there's a constant loop of communication. I think that as you are organizing your plans and doing this root cause analysis, it would be important to give the community a timeline for when you would plan to implement these changes, so that we have an idea of when we can look for our deliverable. I had a question as well, which I know you probably can't answer. I tried to skim the safety plan. I'm just a little bit confused about, since we have an open campus, and I know you mentioned that there was a lockout recently, how are the children notified of a lockout if they are not on campus, so that they know not to approach the school? Because most of them will have a cell phone. Right, but they went out for lunch, right? So how do they know?
There is an answer to that question.
Okay, so that's just my question. Because if there's not a mechanism, then I'll know that when I get the text message, I got to call my daughter, that sort of thing. And then the last...
I'll email you
okay.
a follow-up to that.
The last thing I wanted to ask is if there could potentially be a little bit more flexibility for the drop-off of the COVID tests. And this is just due to, we pick them up every week, but they've never made it into the box because we don't get there early enough to turn it in. So if teachers could be encouraged to at least let the child leave to go turn in their test, that would be great. Thank you.
Thank you for your feedback and your ideas. Is there anybody else here who didn't sign in who'd like to speak? Just please remember to state your name and your mailing address. Dr. Champ, did you?
Yeah, I was just going to say, there was an email just went out from Mr. Berkowitz. Oh, you're welcome to keep coming up.
Keep coming.
Mr. Berkowitz did put an email tonight that did indicate, Ms. Hebert, Dr. Hebert, Mr. Berkowitz put out an email tonight that references a cell phone chain. We need to get student cell phones. So there's going to be something coming out in the near future to collect student cell phones. We had that in place prior to COVID. So if they're out of the building, because we have your phones, we don't have their cell phones. So we'll collect those, and then if there's a lockout or lockdown, anything like that, we can communicate out to students who are out of the building, whether to stay away or whether it's safe, when it's safe to return.
Okay, thank you.
Hi, Atasha Green, 508 7th Avenue. I'm going to be quick. I had this really long thing planned out to talk about, but a lot of people said what I wanted to say. And I think it's just safe to say that two things can exist at the same time. And I was a little distracted as I'm trying to practice someone mentioned that, maybe we should think about safety first. And I just want to bring back last Thursday with the racism that happened. My child will not be a statistic. He will not turn to self-harm or suicide because he's being bullied in school, because racism is a form of bullying, and that is safety as well. Just the same way we are upset about what happened on Monday and there's so much that's going on. Let's also think about the families that feel unsafe in the school, that my child is there feeling like he does not belong, that he's being teased about his skin color, his hair, or that feeling that you get as a parent when your child is telling you that, I feel like I don't belong, or this person said that they laugh at me because I'm black, or these things are happening in our schools, and my son is in elementary. And to hear a high school student say that it's been happening to her since middle school, it's happening. It's happening not at Simon. I go to Hutch, the most diverse school in this district. It is your responsibility between 8:15 and 3 o'clock to keep my child safe. When his glasses is broken, I get a call from the nurse, I put a Band-Aid on it. When something goes wrong, policy needs to be in place to address these things that are happening when another child is telling another student about themselves. It is not my responsibility because I've also heard that this is a solution, that the parents should handle this. Who's to say that that parent isn't teaching their child that? Who's to say that that child isn't reflecting what they've learned from their parents? It's not up to me to raise their child. You can raise your child however you want to, but in the school, the zero tolerance of harassment or bullying should be across the board, and racism is a part of that. It is up to you to hire a DEI coordinator, to implement the DEI policy because the guidelines are needed. How do we handle the situation? My 5-year-old would love to come to school with Dracula teeth and her costume every day, but she cannot. Why? Because it impacts other students. It's a distraction. My child should not be distracted in school. He's there to learn. They're there to learn. They should not have to wonder about, if I like my hair, why are you taunting me about that? There was a time when we didn't have policy for bullying, and what happened? There was numbers increasing of suicide and self-harm that are happening within schools that it was implemented. Do not wait for something to happen in Pelham. I'm sorry, I have an accent. When I get emotional, it comes out. Do not wait for something else to happen. It's been happening. You're hearing it from high schoolers, and I'm sorry, a lot of parents that are talking are scared. And there's two types of scared. There's the fear that your child might see you for who you really are, so you're trying to go against this, and that's a death rattle that's happening. And then there's a fear from parents that are trying to protect your child, and you are working really hard for them to be in Pelham. Like, you come in here, there's a character school for middle school. My child's learning the bare essentials at Hutch, the pride. Like, please understand that do not wait for something to happen. These things have been happening long before a lot of you have been a part of this board. It is your responsibility now to do what's right. Two things can happen at the same time, but they fall under the umbrella of safety. The emotional and the mental impact, and I can look at it from the clinical lens as well, and I can give you 100 reasons for both sides, but that's not my place. I'm a parent first, and I'm coming to you as a parent. You are parents, and you have all these other roles as well, but you're here as a BOE member. You have you're supposed to do this. There's an issue, there's a problem. Do not wait for something real, something bad to happen for you to implement what is needed. It's needed, it's a necessity. You cannot do it all. I cannot imagine how you guys are still here up, like doing all this hard work, and I'm so happy and thankful and feel gratitude for all the work that you're doing. It cannot be easy, but you cannot do it all. You need to implement the policy, the DEI policy, and hire a DEI coordinator. It's needed. The research is out there. It's across the board. Don't wait for something bad to happen to Pelham, because I'm telling you, my child will not be a part of that statistic. Not my friend, not any of the BIPOC community. We're moving in white-led spaces already. My children do not need any of the distractions right now. Please, I'm urging you to take this very seriously, just as you're taking what happened on Monday and Saturday and Friday serious. They are all under safety. The mental well-being of our children is important. The physical well-being of our children is important. That's your role here. That's all outside of what I had written, but that's it. Thank you.
Thank you for your heartfelt comments. Sure.
I wasn't planning to speak either. My name is Elena Cabral. I live at 310 3rd Avenue, and I feel like I'm playing a lot of catch up here on the incidents that happened leading up to this week, all of which is problematic and all of which is connected in many ways. And so I'm just going to take it step by step. With regard to, the incident over the weekend, I work in higher education. I understand there are certain protocols and things, but as a journalist, as a former journalist, I know, and just as a parent who was engaged in watching news and following news very quickly and asking critical questions after a tragedy happens, and all of the second guessing, we should have done that, we should have seen that, we should have known this kid was being bullied, all that stuff, it feels like this is the beginning stages and my worst case scenario of something that could happen. And I don't think it's terrible to say that. I don't think it's terrible to say it's absolutely critical to protect a child's privacy, absolutely. No one here has even asked for anyone's name. But at the same time, I don't feel as a parent that I've been assured that not just the threat, but the possible ticking time bomb has been neutralized. Neutralized in the sense that the cops didn't just go there, have a conversation, and say, no threat. That's not enough. That's not enough, because if a child is being bullied and a child is growing up with anger and hearing from parents or whatever, or popular culture, that the world is a terrible place and that life doesn't matter, that human life doesn't matter, then that's a ticking time bomb. And I don't feel satisfied yet that that child is being fully supported and dealt with in a way that he will not slip through the cracks, and that no child will slip through the cracks. Secondly, with regard to the racism stuff, as a Mexican American who grew up in Texas and worked very hard to become an assistant dean at an Ivy League university, but is at times mistaken for my child and her friend's nanny, I can tell you that hatred and bigotry, it's real. And it pains me to hear from my daughter that the N-word is used regularly in class, or that a film about Dia de los Muertos, which is part of my culture, is mocked by a bunch of white boys in her Spanish class. And that when she tells her counselor, and then the counselor tells the teacher says, why are you telling me? What do you want me to do? That response, what do you want me to do? That's not acceptable. It's not acceptable. I work in higher education, and I can tell you, if you think that these students are upset now and that these parents are upset now, wait till they get to college. Just wait till they get to college. They need to be prepared for the world that's out there, and I don't know that they are being prepared. I feel like I'm preaching to the choir here, because my intent was to say, if it's your kid who's using the N-word because maybe they hear it in music and they think it's fine, could you please talk to them? But I know it's not this group. Maybe it's somebody who's watching. Could you please talk to your kids about the use of that word and when it's okay and when it's not okay? Could you please talk to your children about respecting other cultures? Because not all of you can do it, and not all of the teachers do it, and obviously not all of them are willing to do it. And when I came to this village, I came here thinking, I've done my part to raise respectful children, who understand how to do good and be good. I don't have the time to teach all of your children or to fix what's wrong, but I implore you to take it seriously, to know that your children, and God bless them, so many of the children in this community are super accepting. This is not the majority. And when I hear parents today and this wonderful PTA come out and say, we won't stand for this, I feel so much better. But it's still happening, and there needs to be consequences for that, immediate consequences for that. And in many schools, there is. It's just not tolerated. So that needs to happen. The other thing is, as a journalist, I know that in the past year, for example, in the media, when you would see a debate, for example, in real time by 20 candidates running for president, almost immediately in real time via Twitter, there's what's called fact-checking, right? So you have a team of reporters who say, let's see at what, Donald Trump just said or Biden just said, and let's check it out. That's instantaneous. That's called live tweeting. Why isn't it possible for the administration to live tweet a fact check and say, we know that there's rumors are going out there. Let's just set this straight. There is no gun. There was no threat of shooting up the school. That can be done in real time. It doesn't cost you anything. It doesn't reveal any names. And it can go a long way to lowering the temperature and keeping students from running out into the street without signing out, without telling anybody. That type of thing cannot happen. It doesn't have to happen. And you can be transparent without violating any of the protocols that are clearly important to you, but that might be setting up an instance in which a child slips through the cracks and a tragedy happens. No one wants to see that. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else? Sure.
All of the committees have been set up specifically, like the Cultural Competency Committee. Sorry, better? So like the committees, specifically at the Cultural Competency Committee, they've all been set. I have been told that there is no Black American on that committee. Can you verify that if that is accurate?
I don't know that at this point in time, but I can look into that and get back to you for sure,
Okay.
Crystal.
And
So
they'll all get posted to the district website too, so
Yeah.
I mean, not that you know everybody in town, but,
Right. But I was told by the people who got accepted, and so that there are no Black Americans, and considering the fact that we brought up about racial incidents and not having that voice on the committee, it's going to be a huge faux pas, and you cannot fix something with those individuals not at the table.
it hasn't been the case in the past, though.
Yeah, I'll follow
And
up.
I mean
see.
Black American, not Hispanic American, like every group should be represented on that committee if they apply.
Yeah, and that's the piece I don't know.
Okay.
Is who applied and who got, off the top of my head, I don't remember the list of who got seated.
Okay.
But I'll review that and reach out and let you know.
Thank you.
Thank you. Do you want to just quickly say that one piece about, just a reminder?
Yeah, I think, certainly I appreciate all the feedback that we're hearing. I'm taking lots of notes tonight, and, folks I said I would follow up with. I think I really do appreciate it. And just want to remind, please, I'm sure in many cases you probably will, please be sure that you're in communication with the building administration about these issues. We're hearing specific things about student experience. We need to know those things, and not just in this forum, but your building administrators need to know those things so that they can address those and we can hold people accountable. So thank you for sharing it. Thank you for your support, and thank you for your partnership. That's one thing I've always appreciated about Pelham. What I appreciate is we're willing to come to the table and admit where we have areas to grow, and that folks come together to help that happen. And I look forward to continuing to work. I look around, I see so many of you that I know are in our committees, our PTAs, crossing guards, you're very involved in the school already, and I look forward to working together with you to improve in these ways. So thank you for coming out tonight. Appreciate it.
Okay. So we still have business to get to, not much, but feel free to stay. You can leave as well. Section 6 is financial reports and motions. I'm going to take a consent of 6.1 to 6.4. Do I have a motion?
So moved. Sorry.
Thank you, Sue and Benny. Jim, anything in addition to your report to add?
One question about the lunch. When is that going to get back up and running? Full lunch?
After COVID.
After COVID, so you have no idea then?
Probably, I would speculate, Jim, probably we're talking next school year.
As far as we know. When we know, certainly we'll forward that.
Okay,
But
because you have a beautiful kitchen over at Hutch that I'm expecting to be working in, and it's not open yet.
not yet.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dana.
It is a nice kitchen.
It is a nice kitchen.
It is.
Okay, so we're taking a consent of 6.1 to 6.4. I know you referenced some of this in your,
I did, yes. As you look, there are two change orders. One is a notification for an amount that was less than $50,000. And the second one exceeds that amount, which requires board approval. They are connected as you look at it. That has to do with the demolition and the asbestos-contained materials. In order to keep the process moving, so we didn't have further delays in the demolition, we did ask them to break it down so that we can move it forward so that the superintendent could approve the first end of it and that's why you're seeing the second part of it this evening. So that's where you see that. And then, again, on the corrective action plan, the anticipated completion dates were omitted from the original accepted corrective action plan from the board. This is a resubmit from last month, and this is something that was picked up by the state for the first time last year. So that's why we missed it on the last month's meeting.
Thank you.
Jim, just a question.
Mhm.
You got two change orders here, totally roughly 150,000. We have sufficient reserves to cover this and other anticipated change orders?
We do. We're doing an analysis of our change orders right now. Without putting the hex on us, we find ourselves in a decent position. And when we finalize that reconciliation, we're going to share that with the committee too.
That's a yes.
Yes.
Thank you.
I don't want to hex us.
I just want a yes or a no. Thank you.
Any other questions or comments? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? I'll take a consent of 6.5 and 6.6. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Thanks, Ian. A second?
Second.
Thank you. So in this is the approval of the high-risk winter sports at the middle school and high school. We did this in the fall for high-risk sports, and inclusive of us, one of these fun jobs that the board gets gets to do during times of COVID is to actually approve high-risk sports, those deemed high-risk by the state. And as with the fall, students who participate in these sports in middle school and high school must be vaccinated or adhere to weekly COVID testing.
Yeah, could I just add to that? Because I know it took the testing company a while to get up and running, so we were just getting processes in place late in the season that's closing now, and that's actually what I forgot to mention earlier in my piles. Unfortunately, we had a great postseason. Our volleyball team, well-fought game, but unfortunately their season ended tonight, our volleyball season. Our football team, though, is playing
Somers
on Friday. Yes, Friday at 7 o'clock up in Somers, if folks are interested in that. And then we also still have four girls that are still competing in our swim sectionals, Katie Doherty, Cindy Wang, Julia Gunster, and Maddie Horner. So that's exciting. What I was going to say with the high-risk sports is the process. We've purposely selected Monday for testing to minimize quarantining and contact tracing. And that also helps for sports like football, who have their games on Fridays. Should someone test Tuesday and test positive in our testing program, it would not go back to the game and knock out the entire team. So as we go forward into the new season, same thing, we're going to stick with Mondays. Students are responsible to pick up their test kits on Friday, and then drop it off on Monday, as was shared earlier, and then they have to provide the printout or show a negative test result to their coach on Wednesday. Tests are due Monday, results come back by the end of Tuesday. So when they get to practice on Wednesday, they show the coach. That's kind of the accountability circle that we've finally got in place now. Just wanted to share that.
Can I ask a question regarding that woman was talking about the returning of the test kits on Mondays?
Yeah.
Can you give me a little more as to what the problem is?
I'm not fully sure. The test kits on Monday, at the middle school, they get dropped in the nurse's office. At the high school, they get dropped in the main office. It's just a drop box, but you do have to go to the office.
I think it was something about the timing of the drop-off.
Okay. Generally, I think it's.
Yes.
Oh, yeah. Sorry, I didn't see you were still here.
I have two kids, one at the middle school, one at the high school. They're asked to come in early to turn it in, and we're never early, I can tell you that right now. But the problem is none of his teachers will let him leave to go turn it in, so he never turns it in because he's in class the rest of the time before noon. So if they could just allow them to go turn it in, if they're not there, at 7:50 or whatever, to get it turned in.
Okay.
Thank you.
So to take a couple minutes at the beginning of class to turn it in, maybe?
I can mention that.
So,
Okay. No, sorry.
There may be. I know that we did have
walked
some.
by one
We did have some. Okay. All right. So maybe we can talk with the high school about making a more accessible one. That may solve
we
it
might
as
need
well.
2 drop
That makes
boxes
sense.
since there's 2 entrances. So was there anything you were going to add? I was just going to read the high-risk sports that we're approving are ice hockey, boys and girls.
Sorry,
all-
Dr. Champ, you were saying that volleyball made it to the semifinals but lost this evening? Is that, sorry?
Yes.
I
that's
just
correct.
wanted to
Yes,
clarify.
that's correct.
This meeting's
Sorry.
gotten late and wonky. So it's girls and boys ice hockey, all of the boys and girls basketball teams from modified all the way up through varsity, cheerleading grades 7 through 12. I think I've covered them all. Those are the high-risk sports. And then also a motion to dispose of equipment. Any questions or comments? I guess we
I
were
do-
asking questions before I called for them.
Would the unified basketball fall under that?
Probably will. I think quarantine rules would likely be similar.
Yeah, I would think so, too.
Yeah.
I wonder if it
Is that
says
on
it
your
here.
list?
I'm
I didn't
looking at it.
recall
It says
seeing.
basketball, so-
Yeah, I
would
didn't know
be-
if it was
It
all
said
encompassing.
modified.
You know, you're right, we did specify the different levels for the other ones, so,
It's worth
Does
it.
say
It's worth a
modified.
Well,
look.
unified's not
Unified.
listed,
Yeah,
but
unified.
yeah.
modified is listed,
You know,
varsity, JV.
I think to that point, then maybe we should approve it with that, that amendment, that it would also include unified.
So Alex, if we approve it, when we approve it, can you just put that with the caveat that we're going to add unified basketball? Last year was in the spring, the first season that we did it was in the winter, so that's why I don't know.
I thought it was winter as well, yeah.
It's a great
At one
question.
point was right. Okay.
Okay, yeah. Worst case, we reapprove it in the spring.
It is fun to watch.
It's the best. Any other questions or comments? All in favor? Aye. Any opposed, any abstentions? Okay, I'll take the last one, 6.7, all by itself. It's a motion to accept donations. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Thank you, Joan. A second? Thanks, Sue. So we have 3 donations. One for $17,680 to support the Extended Academy after-school program at the Pelham Middle School, and that gratitude be bestowed upon its donor, the Pelham Civic Association. Another one for $13,963, a grant for The Boy Who Harnessed the Wind, a collaborative approach to STEAM education and outreach in our community, and that gratitude be bestowed upon its donor, the Pelham Education Foundation. And I guess we have more than 3, actually. My eyes are getting tired. Put on my glasses. And that donation of $7,000 for grant 2203 for a new light board for the Pelham Memorial High School auditorium, and that gratitude be bestowed upon its donor, the Pelham Education Foundation. And finally, another donation of $2,500 for support of the Pelham Memorial High School Centennial Celebration that we held in October, and that gratitude be bestowed upon its donor, the Pelham Education Foundation. And that generosity truly continues. Any questions or comments?
Very thankful.
Yes. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay, we already had our policy monitoring update, and we did section 7, 8. Section 9 is pupil personnel services. We have a Schedule D. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Thank you, John. A second?
Second.
Thanks, Benny. Any questions or comments? All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Any abstention? One last item is new business. Is there any new business that we haven't discussed tonight? Okay, well, then I'd like to adjourn the meeting. Ms. Tabaz, do we have a motion to adjourn?
Madam President, would you entertain a motion to adjourn?
So moved. A second?
Second.
Thank you, Sue. Any questions or comments? All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Thank you and good night.
All right.